The sun was barely cresting over the misty hills surrounding Lake Serenity when I first saw the notice taped to the door of my cabin. It was a crisp, official-looking document, stamped with the seal of the Lake Serenity Homeowners Association. The words "Eviction Notice" screamed in bold, red letters, as if they were trying to burn a hole through the weatherwood of my front door. My heart sank, but not for long. I'd been through too much with this cabin, my sanctuary, my escape from the world, to let some HOA clipboard warrior dictate my fate. By the end of the week, I'd make a statement they couldn't ignore. Private property, signs staked around the entire lake. Every inch of shoreline claimed in my defiance. My name's Ethan Caldwell, and that cabin on Lake Serenity is more than just a weekend getaway. It's where I spent summers as a kid, fishing with my dad, where I scattered his ashes after he passed, and where I've been rebuilding my life after a messy divorce left me with little more than a pickup truck and a dream of quiet. The cabin's nothing fancy, a one-bedroom A-frame with a sagging porch and a wood stove that smells like pine and memories. But it's mine. Or so I thought until the HOA decided to flex its muscles. The trouble started 6 months ago when the Lake Serenity HOA, a self-appointed council of busybodies who seemed to think they owned the entire county, began tightening their grip. New rules popped up overnight. No unapproved docks, no loud music after 9 p.m., no unsightly decorations, whatever that meant. I mostly ignored them. My cabin was on a private lot, deeded to my family since the 1950s, long before the HOA even existed. I figured their rules didn't apply to me. Apparently, I was wrong. The eviction notice claimed I had violated some obscure bylaw about unauthorized land use. They said my dock was too long, my fire pit was a hazard, and my refusal to pay their annual dues was grounds for seizure. Seizure of my family's land. I tore the notice off the door, my hands shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. I wasn't just going to roll over. I'd spent years fixing up that cabin, pouring my heart into every nail and shingle. If they wanted to fight, they'd get one, just not the kind they expected. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of black coffee, staring out at the lake. The water was glass smooth, reflecting the stars like a second sky. An idea started to form, wild and reckless. The kind of idea that makes you laugh out loud because it's so absurd it just might work. The HOA thought they owned the lake? Fine. I'd claim it right back. The next morning, I drove into town, the bed of my pickup rattling with purpose. At the hardware store, I loaded up on wooden stakes, weatherproof paint, and a stack of blank signs. Back at the cabin, I spent hours hammering out my message in bold black letters: private property, no trespassing. By dusk, I'd planted the first dozen signs along my shoreline, each one a middle finger to the HOA's overreach. But I didn't stop there. Over the next 3 days, I kayaked around the entire lake. 6 miles of shoreline, planting signs every 100 yards. I didn't own the whole lake, of course, but I figured a little theatrics might shake things up. If the HOA wanted to play hardball, I'd play performance art. The reaction was immediate. By the weekend, my signs were the talk of Lake Serenity. Neighbors I'd never met started showing up at my dock, some amused, some annoyed. Old man Jenkins, who'd lived on the lake longer than I'd been alive, brought me a 6-pack and a grin. "You're stir of the pot, son," he said, cracking open a beer. About time someone did. Others weren't so friendly. Karen Whitaker, the HOA president with a perm as tight as her smile, left me a voicemail demanding I remove the signs or face legal consequences. I saved the message. It felt like a trophy. But the real turning point came when I got a visit from Riley, a local reporter for Serenity Gazette. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with a camera slung over her shoulder and a notebook full of questions. "Ethan, what's the deal with the signs?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "You trying to start a war with the HOA?" I leaned against my porch railing, the lake sparkling behind me. "Not a war," I said. "A conversation. They think they can push people around. Take what's ours. I'm just reminding them this lake belongs to all of us, not just their rule book." Riley scribbled furiously, her eyes lighting up. "Mind if I take some photos? This could be a story." "Knock yourself out," I said, gesturing to the signs dotting the shoreline like sentinels. Her article hit the Gazette's website the next morning, complete with a drone shot of the lake ringed with my signs. The headline read, "Local man claims lake in bold stand against HOA." By noon, it was trending on social media. Comments poured in, some calling me a hero, others a lunatic. A few folks even started a hashtag Lake Serenity Rebel. I didn't have a smartphone, but Riley kept me updated, her texts buzzing like a swarm of excited bees. The HOA didn't take kindly to the publicity. They called an emergency meeting at the community center, and I decided to crash it. The room was packed with lake residents, some clutching coffee mugs, others whispering like they were at a funeral. Karen stood at the front, her clipboard like a scepter. "Mr. Caldwell's actions are a direct violation of community standards," she declared, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Those signs are an eyesore and a threat to our property values." I stood up, feeling every eye in the room on me. "With all due respect, Karen, my family's been on this lake since before your HOA was a twinkle in anyone's eye. You don't get to evict me from my own land. And those signs, they're staying until you back off." The room erupted. Some clapping, some booing. Karen's face turned the color of a ripe tomato, but before she could respond, a woman in the back stood up. I recognized her as Marta, a quiet widow who lived on the North Shore. "Ethan's right," she said, her voice steady. "You've been raising dues, making rules nobody voted on. My grandkids can't even swim without you sending a fine. Maybe we need more signs." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Karen banged her gavel, but the meeting was already slipping out of her control. I caught Riley's eye in the corner. She was filming the whole thing, her camera barely hiding her grin. That night, I sat by the lake again, the air thick with the scent of pine and possibility. My signs glowed faintly under the moonlight, a silent challenge to the status quo. But I knew this was far from over. The HOA wasn't going to back down, and neither was I. Across the water, I saw a flicker of light. Someone else's campfire. Maybe another neighbor fed up with the rules. I wondered if they'd join me, if this was the start of something bigger. One thing was certain. Lake Serenity was waking up, and I was just getting started. The morning after the chaotic HOA meeting, Lake Serenity buzzed with a new kind of energy. I woke to the sound of birds and the distant hum of a motorboat, but there was something else in the air, a quiet rebellion brewing. My private property signs still stood proudly along the shoreline, their bold letters glinting in the dawn light. I'd half expected the HOA to send someone to rip them down overnight, but there they were, untouched, like silent guards of my defiance. As I sipped my coffee on the cabin's porch, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Word of the hashtag Lake Serenity Rebel movement had spread beyond the lake's shores. Riley, the reporter from the Serenity Gazette, texted me a link to a YouTube video she'd posted. A montage of my signs, clips from the HOA meeting, and interviews with neighbors who were starting to question the association's iron grip. The video already had a few thousand views, and the comment section was a mix of cheering emojis and heated debates. "This guy's a legend," one commenter wrote. Another said, "HOAs are the worst. Keep fighting, Ethan." I grinned, feeling a spark of pride. My little stunt was turning into something bigger than I'd imagined. By mid-morning, my dock had become an unofficial gathering spot. Neighbors I'd barely spoken to before started showing up, some with folding chairs, others with thermoses of coffee or homemade muffins. There was Marta, the widow from the North Shore, who brought a tin of oatmeal cookies in a fierce determination to stick it to Karen. Then came the Patel family, who own a cabin 2 lots down. Their teenage daughter, Priya, was glued to her phone, live-streaming the gathering to her small but growing YouTube channel. "This is, totally viral," she said, adjusting her baseball cap. "People are obsessed with your signs." I wasn't sure how to feel about being a viral sensation, but I liked the company. We sat in a loose circle, swapping stories about the HOA's overreach. Mr. Patel recounted how they'd fined him for planting wildflowers in his yard, claiming they disrupted the aesthetic. Marta chimed in about the time they'd threatened to tow her grandson's kayak for being improperly stored. It was clear the HOA's rules weren't just about order, they were about control, and people were fed up. As the sun climbed higher, an idea took shape. What if we don't just complain? I said, leaning forward, what if we make this lake ours again? Not with signs, but with something that brings us together. The group went quiet, waiting for me to explain. I gestured to the water. A festival, right here on the lake. Music, food, games, something for everyone. Show the HOA were a community, not their personal fiefdom. Priya's eyes lit up. Like a Lake Serenity Freedom Fest. I could promote it online, get local bands, maybe even some food trucks. My cousin's in a band. They'd play for free just to mess with the HOA. Marta nodded slowly. My late husband used to organize barbecues for the whole lake. People loved it. We could do that again, but bigger. Mr. Patel rubbed his chin. We'd need permits, though. The HOA will try to shut it down. Let them try, I said, feeling bolder by the second. We'll keep it on private land. My lot, your lot, anyone who's in. They can't stop us from having a party on our own property. The group erupted in excited chatter, ideas flying like sparks. Priya suggested a flotilla of decorated kayaks and canoes. Old man Jenkins, who'd wandered over with another six-pack, proposed a fishing contest with prizes for the kids. Someone else mentioned a bonfire with Esmores, as long as we kept it HOA compliant to avoid another fine. By the time we broke for lunch, we had a rough plan and a name, the Lake Serenity Freedom Fest. Priya was already designing a logo on her phone, a cartoon fish holding a private property sign. That afternoon, I kayaked out to check my signs, making sure they were still standing. As I paddled, I noticed something new. A few homemade signs had popped up on other properties. One read, "Keep Serenity free," in bright blue paint. Another, on Marta's lot, said, "This lake belongs to us." My heart swelled. The rebellion was growing, not with anger, but with creativity and community. Back at the cabin, I found Riley waiting with her camera. "Ethan, this is getting huge," she said, practically bouncing. I got calls from 2 regional news outlets wanting to cover the festival. "You're not just a story anymore, you're a movement." I laughed, scratching the back of my neck. I just wanted to keep my cabin. Now I'm planning a party for the whole lake. "It's more than that," she said, her tone serious. "People are tired of being told how to live. You're giving them a way to fight back without fighting. It's inspiring." Her words stuck with me as I worked on the festival plans that evening. I sketched out a rough map of my lot, marking spots for a stage, food stalls, and a kid zone. Priya texted me a link to a crowdfunding page she'd set up, already nearing its goal for supplies. Neighbors were volunteering left and right, some offering to grill, others to donate tables or string up fairy lights. Even Jenkins promised to dust off his old banjo and play a tune or two, but I knew the HOA wouldn't sit idly by. Sure enough, the next morning, a new notice appeared on my door. Not an eviction this time, but a cease and desist letter demanding I cancel festival for unpermitted public assembly. Karen's signature was scrawled at the bottom, her handwriting as sharp as her voice. I chuckled, tucking the letter into a drawer with the first notice. If she thought a piece of paper would stop us, she had another thing coming. As I stepped outside, I saw Priya and her cousin setting up a tripod by the water, filming a promo video for the festival. "Ethan, come say something," she called, waving me over. I hesitated. I wasn't much for being on camera, but the sight of my signs and background, now joined by others, gave me a surge of confidence. I stepped in front of the lens, the lake sparkling behind me. "Hey, everyone," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "This is Lake Serenity, and we're taking it back. Join us at Freedom Fest. Bring your boats, your food, your music. Let's show them what this lake's really about." Priya gave me a thumbs up as she stopped recording. "That's going viral for sure," she said, already uploading the clip. I didn't know much about the internet, but I knew one thing. The lake was alive again, and we were just getting started. The days leading up to the Lake Serenity Freedom Fest were a whirlwind of activity, like the lake itself had caught a fever. My cabin's front yard had transformed into a makeshift command center, with neighbors dropping by at all hours to help plan, decorate, or just share a story over coffee. The air smelled of fresh sawdust and anticipation, and the shoreline was alive with the clatter of hammers and the laughter of kids painting signs. My private property signs still stood tall, but now they were joined by colorful banners announcing the festival, strung between trees and docks. The lake was starting to look like a canvas, painted with the colors of community, reclaiming its spirit. Priya, the teenage social media wizard, had taken charge of the festival's online presence. Her YouTube channel was now a hub for updates, with daily vlogs showing the preparations. Marta teaching kids how to make flower crowns, Mr. Patel testing his portable grill, and Old Man Jenkins strumming his banjo in a surprisingly soulful rendition of Sweet Home Alabama. The crowdfunding page had exceeded its goal, and donations were pouring in not just money but supplies. A local bakery offered free cupcakes, a hardware store donated string lights, and a nearby farmer promised a truckload of watermelons. Priya's latest video, featuring my impromptu speech by the lake, had racked up 50,000 views. "We're trending, Ethan," she announced, her eyes wide with excitement. People from 3 counties over saying they'll come. The festival was set for Saturday, and by Thursday, the lake was buzzing with new faces. A group of college students from a nearby town showed up with a canoe decorated like a pirate ship, complete with a cardboard cannon. They'd heard about the fest on social media and wanted to join the flotilla. "We're calling it the SS Serenity," their leader, a lanky kid named Leo, said with a grin. "Gotta support the rebel cause, right?" I couldn't help but laugh. My little sign stunt was turning into a full-blown movement, and I was just trying to keep up, but not everyone was thrilled. Karen and the HOA board sent another letter, this one CC to the county sheriff's office, claiming our festival would disrupt public safety. I rolled my eyes and handed the letter to Riley, who was now practically living at my cabin to document the story. "They're grasping at straws," she said, scanning the page. "I checked with a friend at the county office. Your lot's private property, and as long as we keep the noise reasonable and clean up after, they can't touch us." Still, I didn't want to take chances. I called a meeting with the core group, Marta, Mr. Patel, Priya, and Jenkins, to make sure we were covered. We agreed to hire a small security team, mostly local teens happy to earn a few bucks, to manage parking and keep things orderly. Marta volunteered to handle trash cleanup, and Mr. Patel worked out a deal with a porta-potty company to keep things, well, civilized. "We're not just throwing a party," I said, looking around at their determined faces. "We're showing the HOA what a real community looks like." Friday night, the eve of the festival, felt like the calm before a storm, a good storm, the kind that waters the fields and leaves rainbows. I walked the shoreline, checking the setup. Fairy lights twinkled along the docks, casting golden reflections on the water. A small stage sat on my lot, ready for Priya's cousin's band and Jenkins' banjo act. Food stalls were marked out with chalk, and a roped-off area for the kids' fishing contest was ready to go. Across the lake, I saw more signs popping up. Freedom Fest forever and Lake Life, not HOA life. Each one felt like a vote of confidence, a nod from neighbors I hadn't known I had. As I stood by the water, Riley found me, her camera off for once. "Ethan, I gotta say, this is bigger than I expected," she admitted, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I thought I was covering a quirky local story, but it's like you're giving people hope." I shrugged, feeling a little sheepish. I just wanted to keep my cabin. But if this helps folks feel like they've got a say again, I'm all for it. She smiled, then pointed to a boat gliding across the lake. It was the SS Serenity, its cardboard cannon lit up with glow sticks. Leo and his crew waved, shouting, "See you tomorrow, Rebel." I waved back, my chest tight with something I hadn't felt in years, connection. By Saturday morning, the lake was a hive of activity. Cars lined the dirt roads, their drivers greeted by Priya security team with neon vests and big smiles. Food trucks rolled in, filling the air with the scent of barbecue and tacos. Kids ran along the shore, clutching homemade kites shaped like fish and stars. The flotilla was in full swing, with canoes, kayaks, and even a paddleboard dressed up as a giant lily pad. Priya's cousin's band started their set, a mix of indie rock and lake-themed covers that had people dancing on the grass. I was helping set up the fishing contest when I noticed a familiar figure by the stage. Karen, clipboard in hand, flanked by 2 HOA board members. My stomach tightened, but I wasn't about to let her ruin this. I walked over, keeping my tone light. "Morning, Karen. Come to join the fun." Her lips pursed like she'd bitten a lemon. "This is an unauthorized event, Mr. Caldwell. I've informed the sheriff, and they'll be here to shut it down." I crossed my arms, glancing at the crowd of laughing families and bobbing boats. Good luck with that. This is my land, and these are my neighbors. We're not breaking any laws. Before she could respond, Marta appeared, holding a plate of her oatmeal cookies. "Karen, why don't you have a cookie and relax?" The lakes never look happier. The crowd nearby chuckled, and Karen's face reddened. She muttered something about procedure and stormed off, her board members trailing behind. As the sun climbed higher, the festival hit its stride. Jenkins took the stage, his banjo twanging through a crowd-pleasing version of Wagon Wheel. Priya was live-streaming, her phone capturing the flotilla as it paraded past my dock. Riley darted to the crowd, filming interviews with attendees, her grin as bright as the fairy lights. I stood back, taking it all in, the music, the laughter, the lake sparkling like it was in on the secret. This wasn't just a festival, it was a declaration. We were Lake Serenity, and we weren't backing down. But as the afternoon wore on, I noticed a sheriff's car pulling up near the parking area. My heart skipped a beat. Karen hadn't been bluffing. I took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next, knowing the lake and its people were behind me. As the sheriff's car rolled to a stop near the parking area, the Lake Serenity Freedom Fest was in full swing. The air was thick with the smell of grilled corn and sunscreen, and the lake shimmered under the afternoon sun, reflecting a flotilla of decorated boats bobbing in time to the music. Priya's cousin's band was mid-set, their upbeat chords blending with the laughter of kids racing along the shore with their fish-shaped kites. My private property sign stood proudly among the festival banners, a reminder of how this all started. But now, with the sheriff's arrival, I felt the weight of Karen's threat. I squared my shoulders and headed toward the car, determined to keep this day about the community, not the HOA's power trip. The sheriff, a burly man with a gray mustache and a name tag reading Deputy Harris, stepped out, adjusting his hat. Karen was already marching toward him, her clipboard practically vibrating with indignation. I quickened my pace, catching snippets of her complaints. Unauthorized event, public disturbance, those awful signs. Before she could dominate the conversation, I raised a hand in greeting. "Afternoon, Deputy. Welcome to the Freedom Fest. Can I get you a taco?" Harris blinked, caught off guard, and a faint smile tugged at his lips. The crowd nearby chuckled, and I saw Priya subtly angle her phone to capture the moment for her live stream. Karen's face soured, but I kept my focus on the deputy. "We're just having a neighborhood party," I said, gesturing to the joyful chaos around us. "All on private land, all by the book. You're welcome to join us." Harris scanned the scene, kids fishing off the dock, Marta handing out cookies, the SS Serenity gliding by with its glow-stick cannon. "Looks like quite a shindig," he said, his voice gruff but not unfriendly. He turned to Karen. "You got any specific violations to report, ma'am? Noise? Trespassing?" Karen sputtered, flipping through her clipboard. "This entire event is unpermitted. And those signs," she jabbed a finger toward my private property markers, "are an eyesore and a violation of community standards." Harris raised an eyebrow, then walked over to inspect one of my signs. He tapped the wooden stake with his boot. "Says private property. Last I checked, folks can put signs on their own land." He glanced at me. "This your lot, Mr. Caldwell?" "Yes, sir," I said, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "Deeded to my family since the 50s. We're not breaking any laws here." The crowd was starting to gather, drawn by the sight of the sheriff. Riley was there, her camera rolling discreetly, and Priya's live stream was blowing up with comments like, "Go Ethan, and don't let the HOA win." Harris seemed to sense the attention, and he raised a hand for quiet. "I'm not here to shut down a family party," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Long as you keep it safe and clean up after, I don't see an issue. But," he added, looking at Karen, "if there's no clear violation, I'm not wasting my day on this." The crowd erupted in cheers, and Karen's face went from red to purple. She opened her mouth to argue, but Marta stepped forward, holding out her cookie plate. "Deputy, try one. Fresh baked this morning." Harris hesitated, then took a cookie, earning another round of laughs. Karen stormed off, her board members trailing like deflated balloons. As Harris munched on the cookie, he leaned toward me. "Off the record, Caldwell, I grew up on a lake like this. HOAs can be a pain. Keep it civil, and you won't see me back here." He tipped his hat and headed back to his car, leaving the festival to roar back to life. The rest of the afternoon felt like a victory lap. The flotilla paraded around the lake, with Leo's pirate ship leading the charge, blasting a playful arg through a megaphone. Jenkins took the stage again, this time with Priya's cousin joining him for an impromptu duet that had the crowd clapping along. Riley pulled me aside to show me her latest footage. A montage of the festival, set to the band's music, with shots of smiling faces and my signs glowing in the sunlight. "This is going viral," she said, her eyes sparkling. "You're not just a local hero anymore, Ethan. People are talking about this nationwide." I was about to respond when Priya ran up, her phone buzzing with notifications. "Ethan, check this out." She showed me her live streams chat, where viewers were sharing stories of their own HOA battles. Someone from Oregon had written, "Inspired by hashtag Lake Serenity Rebel, starting our own community fest." Another from Texas said, "We need an Ethan out here." Priya grinned. "You're, like, sparking a revolution." I laughed, but the idea stuck. What if this wasn't just about Lake Serenity? What if other communities could take back their spaces, not with fights, but with festivals, music, and togetherness? As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the lake, I gathered the core group, Marta, Mr. Patel, Priya, Jenkins, and now Leo, who become an honorary member. "This festival's a hit," I said, "but what if we make an annual thing? Or help other lakes, other neighborhoods do the same?" Marta's eyes lit up, like a network of Freedom Fests. My husband would have loved that. Mr. Patel nodded. We could share resources, tips, maybe even a website. Priya's got the tech skills. Priya was already typing. "I'm on it. We'll call it the Freedom Lake Network. I'll set up a channel, get the word out." Jenkins strummed his banjo lightly. "Long as I get to play, I'm in." As the festival wound down, the fairy lights flickered on, turning the lake into a glowing wonderland. Families packed up, but the energy lingered. People promising to come back next year, neighbors swapping numbers, kids begging for one last paddle. I stood by my dock, watching the last boats drift away, the lake quiet but alive with possibility. My signs were still there, but now they felt less like a protest and more like a promise. This lake was ours, and we'd keep it that way. But as I turned to head back to the cabin, I saw a new sign planted near my mailbox, one I hadn't made. It was small, painted in bright red letters. "Lake Serenity stands united." Below it was a note and signed, "We're just getting started." My pulse quickened. Someone else was picking up the torch, and I had a feeling the next chapter would be even bigger than this one.